Mr. Jafari, you are one of the few pilots who tried to shoot at an UFO. And can you tell us what happened when you are in the air and you have seen for the first time an object you could not explain? How looked it like?
Well, actually, something around the midnight, some people saw it above the city and they reported to the control tower of the airport, and after all they find out it's true and they saw it by themselves. So they asked us to take off. The first airplane took off, and after 10 minutes or so I took off. The first plane followed it, and when I took off he said he can't reach it even with the over the speed of sound, and I told him to come back. On the way back, when he was coming, again we saw it on the middle of both of us. When I saw it, it wasn't a thing that I could see. It was some lights flashing, green, amber, blue and red. These four colors was flashing from four sides of and object which could not be seen by itself. However, after a few minutes, when I was looking straight ahead and going through it, toward it, it all of a sudden jumped out about 10 degrees to the right, which I couldn't imagine how fast it was, and when I'm now thinking, the acceleration of the movement and also the G was taking of that movement. However, each time I was pointing the nose of the aircraft toward this thing, after a while would jump another 10 degrees to my right, until about 70 degrees turn. We had little by little turn to have it on the nose, and also I was climbing and going forward to it. I asked the radar, the control tower, if the ground, the airport radar has it inside. They said the radar is not operational at this moment. So my back-sitter, he told me that I locked on. I told him to brake lock and paint it very perfectly with the movement of the antenna upward. So I find out that it is above the horizon, so I was sure that it is the object, not anything else on the ground probably. So we locked on it. It was now 26 miles away us, and we figured out, we calculated the altitude was 33,000 feet. So I didn't pull up the nose too much to let the aircraft go forward also, because I find out that I have 150 knots closer airspeed. So after a while again, I was looking at it, and also inside the radar. This time when I looked at the radar, we were close to 25 miles, which it means 1 mile we got closer. And all of a sudden, by the chance of course, I was looking at the radar, I saw it jumped back about 2 miles and went to the 27 miles and stopped there. It was something unusual to have such a thing flying above that altitude and doing all these things. So between all of this wandering, I saw a round thing which was bright, about half of the size of the moon, and moving downward, came below the horizon, and from below the horizon it started to come toward me. I was really scared at this time. I thought maybe this is going to be a missile or something that they launched toward me. Well, the radar was locked on the main thing, so it couldn't be used for this one, because that could take a long time to break lock from that one to lock on this one, and plus that if I could think that it's a missile, that was no use for it. So the only thing I thought, I said maybe I use another kind of the missile to shoot at him. So when I selected the missile, by the time it was coming from the below horizon toward me and upward, when I looked to my missile panel to see if the missile is selected or not, I saw all of the instruments are fluctuating, and plus lots of statics in the radio hearing, and there was no lights inside the missile panel. So I knew there's no use for none of these things. And to jump out in case of the collision with the second thing, which I would think that maybe it's a missile, it was very dangerous, because if I would jump out in that direction, I would come down with the parachute right inside the blast. So I made a left turn to get away from the direct collision, and just as much bank that I could see the thing through my canopy bow on my right side, on the left turn, and I left the power on the 100% and tightened the friction knob and brought my left hand to the ejection handle between the legs here. And it came forward and forward, and I thought if it comes somewhere around closer than 4 or 5 miles, there is no time to delay. I have to jump out. But someplace it stopped it. It stopped right there, somewhere around 4 o'clock on the right side. By this time, I took a look around to see if I jump out, in which area I'm coming down, so I can recognize when I reach on the ground. When I looked back again, it wasn't there. And I said by myself, what happened? The back-seater, he said that it is on our 7 o'clock. I looked to my left side, I saw it. It is my left side. Now I saw again the main thing somewhere around on 10 or 11 o'clock on the other side. By the time the things started to go around and make a very nice join up underneath the main thing, which was still flashing that 4 lights. Maybe a few minutes, I mean a few seconds later, Another one came out, the same thing.
Which color? The color was
The color was something like a moon, but the moon is brighter, but it was a little, the light was lower than the moon, and it came out and started to make a turn around of me. By this time, any time that these things would be close to me, I would lose contact, lose a radio contact with the ground, with the tower. So I asked the tower to let me to go back to the land, because I do not recommend to follow it anymore, because it's very dangerous and we can't do anything about it. So we started to, they let me to go down and for landing in Teheran airport. I started to go down, and one of those things, the round thing, was following me on the left side at about 8 o'clock, maybe somewhere around 20 miles or so behind of me, was just coming down on the descent. Of course, I had forgotten this part of flying after I landed, but when I listened to the radio tape which they brought it from the tower, I remembered again that thing that happened, and it was following me. For the landing configuration on the base leg, before I make my final turn, I saw something coming forward like a ruler from the opposite side. I thought maybe there is an aircraft, and it was a restricted area, that point of the city, because it was close of the mountain and it was against the traffic and all these things. I asked the tower, what is this aircraft is doing here? And they said there's no aircraft, and we don't have any aircraft up there. On the left turn almost, it came right over top of this, and I could see a thing exactly like a ruler, and on the two sides of it, the two very, very small lights, very, it wasn't so bright. It had it, so I made the turn, but my back-seater said that over that ruler, it was a bow, like a canopy bow, which was a little bright inside of it, but he could not see any person in it. We made the turn on the final. When I looked to my left side, again I saw the main thing on the left side up there was flashing again, all those lights. It was now close to the city. And again one of those round things started to come down very fast, unbelievable. And I thought maybe right now I will see a very, very high explosion when it hits the ground. But that happened. That did not happen. The only thing happened, came over the ground, and every place was bright. I could see the ground and the sands on the ground, and the main thing was up there, and it was close to the ground. I reported this to the base, and they said to the tower, and they said yes, they are seeing both things also. Now, by the time they said to go around and go to 15,000 feet, go again to the same place that thing landed, and see, recognize what it is. I made my go around, and when I was closer to that area, again I had statics, garble in the radio, and the fluctuation in the instrument panels. So I made a hard left turn. I got out of that circle of the area. Now I could hear the tower which was calling me, and I said it is not good condition to go forward to it because everything screws up again, and if it isn't really order, I can go, but I don't recommend to do it because it's very dangerous. So they told me to go back and land, and we landed. Of course, during the whole flight, we could hear a siren, which later on I understood that many other overfly pilots, they had reported it also. We could hear the siren also. We landed, and still the tower and the people inside the tower, they could see the thing, both of them. And when after landing, when I went to the tower, it was gone. They said they all of a sudden took off and through the sky disappeared. Next morning, with a helicopter, we flew to the places, to one place that it was landing, and the siren was coming from that area. With the DF of the helicopter, we went over the place which the siren was, and it was exactly what we thought last night it landed there. There was nothing. It was a free area. It was just a desert. Just sands. No housing, no garden, nothing. We were over it. The needle was turning around. It was showing that the siren is coming from this area, but there was nothing in there. We landed there, and we took a look closer, and it was nothing. The area was not burned, and the color of the ground was not changed, nothing. A few kilometers away from that, there was a housing area. We went there and landed. So the people, when they heard the helicopter landed, they came out, and we asked them if they heard anything last night, or they saw anything last night. Only one man, he said that he heard the sound when he came out. After a while, of course, he couldn't see anything in that area. So that was the whole story that I was challenging for about an hour and 20 minutes in the sky with it. Of course, it was very short.